Welcome back to the Incredible Machines podcast, where we sit down with incredible people doing incredible things. Today we sit down with Shaun Tomson, a South African world champ surfer, author, and leadership speaker who has spent decades using the values of surfing to inspire people around the world. We talk about the lessons from the ocean and applying them directly to business, leadership, and life. And the Surfer's Code, how 12 simple lines of code can transform your mindset. So settle in as we dive deep into an episode filled with wisdom, heart, and the practical lessons we can all learn from somebody who has truly ridden the waves of life at the highest level and come out on top. Let's dive in with the incredible Shaun Tomson. You had a really remarkable parents, and that's the kickoff of your story, I imagine.
Yeah, I had wonderful parents. My mom was a survivor from the island of Malta in the Second World War. She lived there with her family right next to His Majesty's Navy, a seaport. So in 1939, when war was declared, the first thing that the Germans and Italians did is they bombed Malta, because that's where all the warships and battleships were. So, for 4 years she endured a lot of hardship, 3,600 air raids, the most heavily bombed place in the history of the world. They lived in tunnels, underground tunnels, for a number of years. They had 2 direct hits on her home, but they survived. And then they were evacuated. And they were going back to England, but they were evacuated through Suez and then down on the east coast of Africa, ended up in Durban as a stopover. And then mom just walked down West Street, and that was it. She wanted to stay there. So she was a woman of great hope and purpose and faith that had suffered in her youth. And then my dad was also a survivor. My dad grew up on the beach in Durban, a member of Durban Surf, which was a local big surf club in Durban. Was a great swimmer in his youth, body surfer, and his dream was to win an Olympic gold medal. He was South Africa junior swimming champion at like 13 or 14. And then when the war was declared, he volunteered. In those days, South Africans didn't have to volunteer. He volunteered and he flew American bombers, Marauder bombers, and in a great stroke of irony, he was bombing the same Germans and Italians in North Africa and in Italy that were bombing my mom. So he came back from the war, resumed his swimming career, and the Olympic Games were coming up. And then he was surfing at South Beach in Durban, near the pier. They used to have a West Street pier there. And he was really hit hard by a shark. And it hit him so hard it lifted him clear into the air, and just shredded his right arm from the elbow, from the shoulder all the way down to the wrist. That was the end of his swimming career. But he was never a person of bitterness and, would have, should have, could have. He never ever had that attitude. Maintained this great love that he had for the ocean, and taught me how to swim and surf 100 yards away from where he'd had that terrible attack. And loved to support me and my brother and my cousin Michael and all the surfing community. He helped so many young guys with sponsorships and surfboards and clothing and just general level of enthusiasm and passion. He ran the Natal Surf Riders Association, was involved in the administration of surfing, created the first professional surfing competition in the world called the Durban 500, which became the Gunston 500, which was one of the biggest sporting events in South Africa during the 70s and 80s. I mean, I won it 6 times in a row, which was a great thrill for me and a great thrill for my dad. So I had 2 great parents. They had great positive values. They taught me a lot about honor and integrity and about discipline and learning and humility. So I got a huge amount from my mom and dad. They were, neither of them were domineering. When I was in the water competing, it wasn't like my dad was out there directing traffic and telling me I should do this, should do that. It was all left up to me. Everything was left up to me. My dad had great confidence in me and great respect for my judgment. And I think a lot of parents go wrong when they just try to direct kids in the water and just generally, using surfing as a metaphor is like trying to direct their lives. You have to encourage, inspire, support, and be a positive model. Positive. I don't like the word role model, but you have to be. You have to show positivity in the way you behave and act, and not in what you tell and instruct and command and prescribe. And that's what I do now. I've become an educator in my later life. For the last 20 years, I have been using the values of surfing to inspire and influence people in my kind of leadership role. And I love doing it. What do I do it?
Sorry to interject there, and I'm gonna get used to this for the listeners and the watchers out there is getting used to this remote. But before you get into that education, because it's absolutely phenomenal what you're doing and what the book does. This book, and we'll have links to it. We'll give away some hard copies actually on via social media and stuff when it's available here and exclusive books in our stores and that.
Well, it's not. I don't think we're going to be releasing the book again. I don't know. I must contact the publishers in South Africa. But we're doing an audiobook release. So the audiobook will be so it's got a new chapter and I'm reading it, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So the audiobook will be released on the 28th of April, which would be cool for the crew at SA. They can hear me read the book and it's going to be a nice gift for students and young people at university or anyone who's like embarking on something new.
100%. Like and what you were talking about there before, I think I interrupted you, and I wanted to just circle back to was the parenting, and like we had somebody on recently that was a Gen Z expert. He had just a whole bunch of and talking about parents, how it actually is a term I didn't know before, but I heard of helicopter parenting, and then the term he introduced to me was this is Ronan Ayres, who runs Student Village as the brand and the company he's the CEO of, and it was called lawnmower parenting. So it was when they clear the way for everyone, like for everything. So like if I went to school and I forgot my lunch, like that was it. I had a tough lesson. I didn't leave lunch again. Now you go to school and leave your lunch, like mom and dad will rush to get you lunch and make sure you have no obstacles are in your way and that sort of thing. So that's a real difference. But what I remember from the book, I think it was from the book now that was that you used to phone your dad after competitions when you were away, and you should downplay and act as if you lost because of that Gunston. I don't know if it was because of the can you take me through that? The Gunston one where he kind of went, nah, but meanwhile.
Yeah, so my dad had a great sense of humor. He just had a terrific sense of humor, and he was just a very upbeat, funny guy. He'd be standing in a crew of people, he'd be talking, and he'd walk over and join the conversation, and he'd stand on someone's foot. Like purposely, but like he's done it by mistake, and he would just stand there, and we'd all see it, but the person whose foot was being didn't know, and he doesn't know what to do. He's looking over my dad like, "What? Does this guy not know he's standing on my foot?" And then my dad would look down, and everyone would just crack up. I mean, he was just he loved humor, and humor is a great connector. It connects people at this sort of deeply emotional level, and he just instinctively knew that he was always joking and laughing. And like, I'm 17 years old, I'm in the army doing my national service in Durban, and my commandant has given me 2 weeks off for the Gunston, and I did really well in the contest. Now, the finalists, in those days it wasn't instantaneous judging. What they would do is everyone would come in after the final was over. You'd all get up on the podium, and there was 30,000 people there. It was massive. The Gunstons were massive. And you'd stand there, and then they'd create the drama, and they'd wait for the result. And right on the beach they had this huge orange tower, which is called the Gunston Tower. And that's where all the officials and the judges and the commentators were. my dad had started the event, and while my dad never judged, he would be there. It was like his comp, and so I knew now the finals done. I knew he knew the results, and he's up in the tower. I'm on the podium with the 5 of the finalists, and I look up at him, and go like, Dad, how have I done? You know what I mean? And he looks at me, he goes like this, gives me the thumbs down. I go, oh, no. Because I thought, I knew I was close, like first or second. I go, ah. And then they announce the results, 6th, 5th, 4th. And then winning, Shaun Tomson. And I go up there stoked. I look at my dad. My dad is laughing his head off. He thinks it's so funny. But it was a brilliant moment. For me, I was at my first major pro event when I was 17 years old, the youngest guy to ever win a pro contest in the history of the sport. And I think it's still a record. Maybe or maybe not, I'm not 100% sure. But anyway, it was like, winning's important, but it's not everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you just got to flow with it. And like you treat the win and the second or third in sort of the same way. And it's not like everything. Mark Spitz once said, first is first and second is nothing. And here's a famous guy in our period. He was the biggest gold medal winner in the history of the sport until Michael Phelps. And I always thought that comment was antithetical to, it was like the opposite of, like, what about the guy that works his butt off and he comes second? Is that nothing? It's not nothing. It's the process, it's the effort, it's the energy, it's what you give that's important. And in this little thumbs down joke that my dad gave me, he gave me everything without having to give you a structured philosophy on the art and concept of winning and losing. It was like, yeah, it's important, but it ain't everything. And I understood it. I got it there. And I never forgot that moment, And then when I won, nah, how'd you go? "Oh, pretty good." Like, well, where'd you come? No, I came first, Dad. And it's like, we'd have this joke between us. The same thing when I won the world title. I found him out. How'd you go? "No, I did pretty good." And boom, no, Dad, I won. So it was wonderful to share that with my father, and obviously to share it with my mother. My mom was like very educational focused, and it's funny, when I look back on that period, I never, through my whole surfing career, when I was at school, when I was at Clifton, and then I went to a school called Carmel College, I never ever took a day off for surfing. Bunked, I never bunked. Yeah. Yes, if there was like a championship going on, and my dad would go to the headmaster, listen, Shaun needs to go to Hawaii to compete. He needs to take some time off. In fact, between Standard 7 and Matric, I never ever wrote end of year exams. I was always in Hawaii competing. And the first time I wrote an exam in high school was, they used to do like Matric trials, they were called. That was the first time I wrote an exam. I hadn't thought of that for some time. But, I was disciplined, and I knew that, I had to do great in the water, but I had to do great from an educational perspective. And so I had those sort of, that twin focus. And I think it really helped me with my career. In my early days of pro surfing, I was at university, at Natal University, or KZN University as it's called today, studying a BCom at the same time I was competing, which was hard, man. Studying, and then I'd have to shift off to Australia or Brazil, and I'd try to catch a couple of events. Hawaii was cool because Hawaii was during university vacation from November to Jan. So that worked out well. So I could go and win events in Hawaii and come back. But it was a great upbringing, great parents. Yes, we had a great, in my youth, we had a great life, and we were lucky. Yes, a lot of South Africans, especially members of the black community, didn't have a great life. But which you realize kind of in retrospect. But I gave it everything I had, and I was lucky.
Yeah, we'll talk about your incredible machines later. I give that example as a question that I'll ask about your incredible machines, and Madiba is one of mine, my parents and Madiba, and I don't know how far apart we'll be there. It's because you mentioned Madiba and learnings and struggle and what you got from that. But just back to this, because there's a lot to cover here, and I know that we limited in time and that, so that back to that first point was I never turn my back on the ocean. All of these code, these rules are practical. They've got more than one. I mean, some things mean more, and it is like that. I never turn my back on the ocean is like that's a real thing. You never do that, because it'll show you who's boss. Like it's so unpredictable. Yeah. It's totally unpredictable, but that your father. Well, I love that story about your father. I know people that have been attacked and that sort of stuff, and it totally changes their lives, and people will never go back in the water, and they'll have nightmares. And I think he mentioned he may have still suffered with that, but it didn't. He never made that public, and really, I think he was a spot in the competitions and a shark spotter at some stage, as well. You're saying, and this is all.
Whenever I used to surf, we used to surf in areas, sometimes areas that didn't have nets, and he was always there with the binoculars. Like if he spotted a shark, he'd call us in. And when I wrote that book, 12 Simple Lessons for Riding Through Life, I thought of the book as not as a prescription, but just as a perspective. And use my stories to inspire people to write their own code, their own 12 stories. And there's been a lot of research lately coming out of Stanford that stories are 22 times more effective than data alone. So, we live today in a different world, the world of AI. And I'll tell you what, I will categorically, unequivocally state that human stories, human experience, and human interaction is what's going to save humanity. Because creating the perfect pitch, creating the new book, creating the movie, can all be done by AI. But the human experience and the storytelling will never, ever be replaced. And that has been going on since the human race developed. I mean, my brother-in-law was yesterday in the Western Cape and went to the old Bushman paintings, which is a story, and there they were on that wall. So for thousands of years we've been telling stories, and that's what I've become in my later life. I've become a storyteller, and my books are stories, and I encourage everyone, write your code, man. When you write your code, 12 lines, every line beginning with you're writing 12 stories, you're writing 12 commitments. Yes, they're related to the past and the present, but they're related to the future. And it's a very, very powerful tool. You guys talk about these incredible tools. I believe the code method, the method that surfing gave me, you're talking about the most powerful, potent, transformational tool that a person can use. 15 minutes, man. I have changed the consciousness, I call it the mind state, of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people using this simple tool. How do I know? Because I ask people, text me a word that describes your mind state. Hundreds of thousands of people I've asked this since COVID started in February 20. From the biggest companies in the world to schools, universities, rehab clinics, SEAL teams, anywhere there's an organization and a grouping of people. Did it yesterday with a group of granny grommets in Durban. It's a crew of women over 60, all like come to surfing later in life. Did it with them yesterday. Stress, anxiety, depression, disconnection. This is where it starts. From the hottest biotech companies in the world stress, anxiety, depression, disconnection, to the biggest data center providers, the biggest financial groups. All starts the same way. Essentially with those 4 words, I call it a sad mind state. Stress, anxiety, depression, disconnection. I tell 4 stories. This is how simple it is. Anyone can do this. I tell 4 stories. I talk about the origin and development of the code, why I do it, why I do what I do. I tell a surfing story about courage and commitment, about riding the Banzai pipeline. I tell a story about perseverance and resilience, about getting destroyed at Waimea Bay. And then I tell a story about deep interpersonal connectivity through stories. Story about my son and I on the beach together. It's called the Sacred Story Circle. And then everyone writes a code, 12 lines. Every line begins with I will. Simple process. 12 minutes they got. 12 minutes. 1 minute per line. He writes 12 lines together in one room or one live stream. And it's amazing to see. People write by hand too. You don't write on a device. No device. None of that shit. Pick up a pen and you write 12 lines. I call it poetry of the soul. People write the most amazing words. So my stories are just a spark, an ignition. And the code is the method, the structure. So people write their code, 12 lines. And I see everyone together. Let me tell you, the temperature rises in that room. I'm talking the metaphysical temperature. It's amazing. Everyone writes their code. Then I go, okay, now you've written your code. Bust out your phone, take a photo of your code. So it will be with you forever because you've spent an hour and 15 minutes with you. So I take a photo of that and I go, okay. I'm not a philosopher. I'm not a psychologist. Yes, I've studied psychology, I've studied philosophy, and yes, I have a Master of Science in Leadership, and yes, I've learned through experience, and I've suffered, and I've had great trials and tribulations, and I've experienced success and failure. I said, but I have come to understand what the meaning and purpose of our lives is. Observation, not hypothesis. I have observed everyone write down what the meaning and purpose of a multitude of lives are. I will give you insight into one half of the meaning and purpose of life. And that is, I will be better. Simple. How basic is that? I'll be better. We want to be better today than we were yesterday. We want to be better tomorrow than we are today. It's simple. You want to be kinder. You want to have more faith. You want to do what you say you'll do. You want to live a life of integrity, of purpose, of honor. I say, I want you to text me one line, your favorite line, from your 12. And you've written it down there. I will promise you about being better, and the lines come through. I'll have faith. I'll pray. I'll do what I say I'll do. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So now people are reading all these beautiful words that are all so similar to what they've written. So what does that do? It brings people together in this broken, divided, turbulent world. People realize that we're different, but we've got the same values. We want to be better. Okay. Then I say, but that's only half of the meaning and purpose of life. The other half is, I will help others be better. We don't live on this world on an island by ourselves. We want to help other people. We want to bring other people together. Send me your favorite line about helping others be better. And then the beautiful words come through. I'll be the light in the darkness. I'll be a volunteer. I'll be a mentor. I'll be a teacher. I'll be a leader. All these amazing words come through. Now you have people looking around. It's anonymous, eh? It's all anonymous when this stuff comes up on the screen. You have people looking around and they connected at this deep emotional level through everyone's stories. Stories are the unifier. The code is a way to commit to a positive story in the future. So now I go, okay, now I want one more thing from you. You can see how I love doing this. Man, I love it. And it never gets old. It's always new and exciting because those words are like unbelievable. Like yesterday, one of the women wrote, I will triumph. I will triumph. Like I'm in a battle here, but I will triumph. It was such words of power and commitment. So then I go, okay, now I want one more thing from everyone. Now I know where everyone started. Stress, anxiety, depression, disconnection. Because when all those words tumble in, it forms what's called a word cloud. And for any of the listeners that don't know what a word cloud is, you might have 1,000 people in the audience and 1,000 words will be texted to you and they all come into the screen. And the common words are larger. So the more frequent words are larger. Like maybe stress is a common word, so it's larger. So you can see at a glance the sort of macro mind state of the group. So now I know the starting point, usually stress, anxiety, depression, disconnection, sad mind state. Then I asked them, I want you to text me a word you're taking home with you. It's 100% positive. All the time. You know what the two big words are? Hope, purpose. How about that? So that's what I do. It's a wonderful thing. I love doing it. And it's amazing to see how you can change mind states in 75 minutes. Stress, anxiety, depression, disconnection, sad mind state, to this hope and purpose mind state. Love is also in there. It's usually like third, but hope and purpose. People really get that. Because our will is about the future, it's about hope. And our will is about commitment. So you see, hope and purpose, how they are so closely linked. So you can see I'm very passionate about it. I love doing it. And my mission is to create a positive wave of hope and purpose around the world, founded on the values of Surface Code. How simple is that?
Yeah, no, it's incredible. You made me think of, it's actually another past guest, Pepe Murray. I don't know if you've ever heard of Pepe Murray, Joe
No,
Public.
I don't.
I was fortunate enough to work with him last year in a group, a team that was assembled for the V20. So it was linked to G20, but the values 20. And South Africa were the hosts last year for G20. So, and it actually was, he's big on purpose. Like that's his biggest thing is he works on, and his, I think his mission is to identify and get South Africa to get their purpose statements correct, so it's his big. We had to work on something like that for us in the V20, and if I can remember correctly, and I revisit my notes, but it was hope was like it was about being a shining beacon, or like South Africa is that hope to the world, like that's what we. And we've got this massive pain body that we deal with, like, and it's there, but there's something here.
When you see what Mandela managed to achieve, like mind-blowing, and mind-blowing, how he, it's perhaps the greatest leadership achievement in the history of the world. How you could bring the country together. And how about this? How he used sport as a unifier.
Yes.
When he walked out on that field with that Springbok jersey in 1995, it shows the power of sport to unify, to energize. He was very pragmatic, but he was also very creative. You know how the Springbok, and he, when you read about the books about the black community, and you go to a rugby match or a test match, and they were always shouting for the other side, and he admits it in his book, and then suddenly there's this opportunity to bring people together through what was maligned. And this sort of about turn that happened that just, I think, brought the country together in such an amazing way. But there's an energy in South Africa, amongst South Africans, that's so pure, positive, hopeful, energetic. Like when South Africans come to the United States, they do amazingly well. Because they have this sort of not genetic, but they have this ambition to succeed and do good. And
Well, just to interject there, I think you're a great example of that, Shaun. So, just on the South Africans, like I worked on a campaign previously, and it was just that we try to work out with this. I'm sure you'll be familiar with it, but it's insight before idea and idea before execution or channel. So it's always got your idea. I mean, creatively, there's beautiful things out there, but they come from human insights. Like that's the baseline. Human insights are developed out of, in our interpretation, out of information, which is data that's been organized. And so you come up with that. And one of the things is, like, with South Africans, we've got a massive diaspora, actually. So, like, we're everywhere. One of the lines that came out, we're in a lot of places like we never used to be. And there's a potential tipping point when we got to our population that we're at. We're at almost a 60 million population. So we're everywhere. And then and this population being that we're many. So there's actually quite a lot of us. It's not like we're not some small little African country. It's actually a significant number. It's not as big as it's the United States or Nigeria or those sort of things. But it's I think it's a tipping point of, like, we are many. So we're everywhere. We're many. And the next thing was that we're winning. We're winning things. So we're winning World Cup rugby. We're winning UFC. We're winning surfing. I mean, Geordie was almost got the title. So it's but when we'll get to that. But, like, so those three things. That means that translated to us to we're unstoppable campaign, and I think it can be there. There is something different, and obviously I'm biased, and I think you would be biased to South Africa, but. There's a different kind of energy, I think. I do think I had this conversation. I don't want it to be too contentious or anything like that, but you're in America, and one of the things I understand about America is that there's, like, they've how much they value freedom, and I was kind of and their patriotism and that stuff like that. I asked a guest recently to like what they understood about the difference between Americans and South Africans. So I'd love to hear your view on this, and whether we edit this part out, I'm not sure, guys. But the part that we got to was, like, South Africans are passionate about South Africa, and like nationalistic in a way, almost. So, like, we're so passionate about being South Africans, and Americans are patriotic. So what was the difference? And what I understood her answer to be was that America seems to be about the individual. It very much is you can be the president of the United States. You could do anything in America. It's amazing. It's the American dream. It's individualistic. Whereas maybe, and again I'm biased, but my Ubuntu and my people, like, are South Africans, and we can do anything. We're stronger together. It's an African proverb based on that campaign. It's like, want to go somewhere fast, go alone. If you want to go somewhere far, if you want to go far, go together. And we're stronger together, and that sort of thing. So that, to me, was the South African interpretation of the difference. I don't know your thoughts.
Yeah, I think both countries are very nationalistic. I think both countries sort of rally under the flag, and I think South Africans do well here in the United States because they're similar to Americans. And Americans certainly have, I mean, there's been some negative publicity about the South African farmers coming over, and but before that, like, South Africans were welcomed here with open arms. I mean, people knew that there was, like, a strong work ethic, a strong ambition ethic, good values, good schools, good universities. I've got so many friends of mine, incredibly successful doctors and people in industry. A lot of South African CEOs and who are now successful will phone me up. Hey, Shaun, why don't you come and talk at my why don't you come and talk at my sales conference, or why don't you talk about my all hands meetings. So there is, like you say, this diaspora. There is this strong South African community worldwide. Australia, there's a lot of South Africans that have done really well, and it's definitely a similar culture there, same sports, cricket, rugby, tennis, swimming, etc. And I'm very, very proud of my South African roots, man. South Africa will always be my homeland. Just America's my new land, and for me, in the business that I was in, which was the surfing business, the center of the surfing world, if you wanted to, achieve, was here in the United States. So
it's the same in a lot of things.
Yeah, my reason for leaving South Africa was just economic opportunity and opportunity to work for an amazing company like Patagonia. I spent 2 years at Patagonia managing their single biggest revenue contributor. It was amazing, and to really learn about purposeful business. He gave away his company $6 billion. He gave away $6 billion, the single biggest environmental donation in the history of the world, 2 or 3 years ago. And the guy walks the walk, talks the talk. And yes, I learned a lot about business. I'd been an entrepreneur my whole life. I'd never worked for anyone. But when I was working for Patagonia, I learned a lot from Yvon Chouinard and that business at Patagonia that, and I like to say that now, I believe, purpose is the new profit. I'll tell you that straight. Purpose is the new profit. Consumers are demanding companies be more purposeful. Employees are demanding that their company be more purposeful and have a mission beyond just bottom line. You know what I mean? Life is more important than just a bottom line. Yeah, you've got to have bottom line success to be able to fund growth and to be able to fund innovation. And but underlying it all, you've got to have a mission, man. What's the mission? Like the greatest management theorist in the history of the world, who everyone has ripped off, a guy called Peter Drucker.
Yep.
I don't know how many books he's written, over 30 books, but his simplest, most powerful book is called The 5 Questions. It's just a great little book. I mean, 2 of the greatest books written all time are like little thin little books. And he says that everyone's got to ask, in business, or if you work for an NGO, you've got to have a period of self-analysis. You've got to analyze where you are and where you're going. And like the code fits in perfectly to this. And his very first question that you've got to ask yourself, what's your mission? What's your purpose? One line, fit on a t-shirt. This is written, I don't know, 30 years ago. What's your mission? And then he goes through, who's your customer, what is your customer value, and what are results, what's the plan, like super simple. And simplicity, I think, is super, super important in this complex, divided, turbulent, broken world. It's like, how can you find something super simple? Hey, you got your mission. Got your mission. I know what my mission is, man. Create a positive wave of hope and purpose around the world based on the values of Surface Code. That's it. That's what I do every day. And I think that I think government, especially in South Africa, I think that they need to be more mission driven. They need to read this book by Peter Drucker. Read this book. Nelson Mandela was mission driven, man. How can we bring the country together? How can we connect people at a deeply emotional level? Walk on a field with a Springbok jersey in front of 80,000 people and the whole world. That's what he did. He brought the country together. That one event, I would say that was one of the most significant like movements or significant it was small, like just walk on a field with a jersey on. I mean, how small was that? But the implications and the repercussions, because the country was still on a knife edge then, man.
Yeah.
95 was 1 year after democracy. But why did he do that? To bring people together.
No.
Why do I do what I do? I want to bring people together. And it's not, let me tell you, the guy was There's a wonderful, I went back to university 10 years ago to study leadership. I did a Master of Science in Leadership. And there's many leadership styles. And there's a leadership style which was Mandela's style, called servant leadership. What's a leader there to do? He's not there to do anything other than to be a servant to the people. That's what he was. He was a servant to the people. Yes, it has kind of a Christian religious basis, which is, faith is great, faith is good. But like, serve, not self-serve. You know what I mean? Country's not a cash register for you to open when you want to buy a new Maserati or Ferrari. It's like, serve. What you there for? You're there to serve. You're there to serve with humility. You're there to serve, to bring the country together, to make life better. I will be better, and I will help others be better. I've seen it. That's the essential meaning and purpose of life. And I think, leaders need to take that more to heart and to task. I'll be better. I'll help others be better. How simple is that?
No, I love that. I love that, Shaun. Thanks so much. I mean, and Madiba, incredible strategist and intelligent. I can see one of the reasons why you admire him, and one of the, and the way it's, everything is very precise and thought through. Like, going out with the jersey is one thing, going out with the number 6 is another thing. And it's like, yeah, because he's the captain, and it just meant so much. Like, it's also he's the captain of the country, and yeah. So, but just to transition
discipline, discipline, sport. How sport how sport brings people together.
Yeah. So there's a few things that you've touched on, and we've jumped around, but the I don't know, I can't remember now. The next part of the code was the paddle around the impact zone. So I understand that, and I know exactly what that means and that. But how does that? What was the metaphorical like?
At a very basic, superficial level, you got the impact zones where the waves break. Okay, you want to get out there, you're a hungry surfer. Take the shortest line. You struggle over the rocks, take the shortest line. And I would see it when I'd go to Hawaii and surf this break called Rocky Point. It's like rocks, got all these rocks, and the break's right in front of all the rocks. And then 25 meters just down the beach is a beautiful sandy stretch. So you can walk 25 meters along the sand, jump in the water, and paddle out. You're not going to get a reef cut. You're not going to get run over. You're just going to have it's going to take a little bit longer, but it's going to be a leisurely glide out there. And while you're gliding out there, you can watch the lineup, and you can watch other surfers, and you can have a much more pleasurable experience. So sometimes it's not always the direct route. That's the best route. It's sometimes not always the quickest route, which is the best route. Sometimes taking a longer time is safer, is better, is more productive, and is more pleasurable. So that was sort of it on the very superficial level. It's not avoidance. It's not fear. Fear's got nothing to do with it. The impact zones where that gnarly stuff happens, but this is just a way to get around it. And also on another level, it can be about conflict and de-escalating conflict. You know, there are some situations and some people, you will never win an argument. You will, it's just, why even try? Do you know what I mean? It's like their mind is made up, their head's filled with propaganda, untruth, and lies. Don't even go there. Just paddle around that impact zone on your journey, you know, to get away. So, you know, I like to think that the surface code that I wrote so many years ago, it's like an onion. You know, it can be peeled and in many different ways, and it can reveal itself to everyone in a different way. You know, I think that that my stories and my surface code, not a prescription. It's like a perspective. And it can be perceived as both a mirror, like people hear my stories, and it's like looking at a mirror and they see their own story. And it can also be perceived as a window. People look at my story and look through the window at their future and where they're going. But that's why it's not a prescription. The only prescription I give is when I speak to students and I tell them, one day you're going to be faced with a life and death decision. One day. And I promise you it's going to happen. It might not happen today, it might not happen tomorrow, but it will come. Someone's going to offer you something, and you're going to have to make that existential choice. What are you going to do? You're going to get in the car with a drunken driver.
Yeah, you were offered heroin, I think the story is.
Yeah, I was offered heroin at 19 years old. I was 11,000 miles from home. You know, mommy and daddy went there. My mate was there, and maybe he wasn't really my mate. And I say, you've got to be careful. And this is it. This is what you do. Think twice. And I get them, what you going to do? And I go, think twice. I go, what you going to do? Think twice. And then they shout out, think twice. Think twice. And I said, if you remember one thing from our discussion, remember surfer dude came and spoke to you, and he said to you, when the decision comes, just think twice. That's all I can ask of you to do.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I love that. I really enjoyed, and it reminded me of a Phil Collins number. But
which Phil Collins number? I love
Think
Phil
Twice.
Collins.
Yeah, don't think twice. Yeah. So.
I don't know if I remember that song. Think Twice. I don't know if I remember.
Think Twice. Yeah. Yeah, beautiful song. We used to sing it at prep, actually. That to me was a discipline. Actually, I got out of that is the discipline to do that, to think twice, but also to paddle around the impact zone, to do, like, not take the shortcut. Stuff is earned like that. Like you get, I get that now. I love
and
that.
Also, just sometimes also just avoid that dangerous situation. You know what I mean? Like just avoid that cauldron of bloody hatred. It's like just avoid it. And it's not like being a coward or being scared. It's just that there's certain things, man, that certain people you will not change. They live with hate in their hearts. Yeah. And it's just...
don't...
what's that great thing that Rudyard Kipling wrote in F? Avoid people that are vexation unto the soul. I can't remember, but it's like just...
they use their words to break bones. The If was actually one of the poems that I grew up in my hall at home at the walkway we had between rooms. My dad's favorite poem, and seeing your words twisted, and so absolutely stunning. It's also pearls before swine. Sometimes people and the negative, that can be quite negative in a way, but sometimes one of the first quotes we had on Luke and I on the podcast was a favorite of mine. It's like when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. Sometimes people just aren't ready.
Yeah, that's sort of Confucian or Zen.
Yeah, so sometimes, and that's frustrating to me too, because there's so many things that dawn on me. Like, again, wish I'd read your book sooner, but like the lesson I've heard, like, I'll be like, yeah, Shaun told me that, and on that interview, like, why did I only learn it now? It's annoying, like that. It also has that part of it. Like, I want and just a quick one. My purpose is to be better infinitely. I love the addition of being able to spread that. I think that'll tie into it. But then it comes into one of the things you said, where you think twice, that it seemed like you were going the way, was like that, the commitment. So I will take the drop with commitment. So many things, your codes tie into each other, whether it's like
they do.
I'll paddle. Yeah.
Like I will. I mean, I'll take the drop with commitment. When I wrote that, I think of the Banzai pipeline. You've been to Hawaii and you know how fierce and dangerous those waves are. And the most fierce and most dangerous waves of all, is the Banzai pipeline. And it's a good metaphor for wanting to succeed as an athlete. It's a good metaphor for wanting to succeed in life and business. Is you got the fear there, man. You got the fear. You're sitting there. You're scared, and the waves are. And then you just paddle in with absolute commitment, and that physicality, that action, that desire and knowledge that you're going to paddle over the edge, it's amazing. It just dissipates the fear. It really does. So, my stories are written from experience. That's not conjecture. I'm not. These are not Steve Jobs' story or Bill Gates' story. I mean, these are hugely successful people. They're just my simple stories. But I think the sea's a great teacher, and the sea has this sort of allure. My son here has the Iliad here. He's reading the Iliad, and then he's going to be reading the Odyssey. And these stories of the sea, and almost like when we used to go to Hawaii, it was like you're going on this battle. You're going on this like pilgrimage. You're going on this odyssey to surf these biggest waves. It had this. People respond to these oceanic stories. The sea has this sort of mystical quality, this turbulence, this uncontrollable aspect to it that I think people really love.
Yeah, I think it's what I got from your book as well is a fascination with the things that we cannot control. So we have this fixation on control, but like the ocean doesn't allow that. Even riding a wave, like you mentioned the Banzai pipeline. So like I remember we used to previously in my agency life we had a reward for making it through 3 months and making your probation. You get a Haagen-Dazs. It was a Haagen-Dazs. You got a Haagen-Dazs because we used to do. If you could get a 6-foot barrel at pipeline, as a bodyboarder back then, you were given a Haagen-Dazs, a Haagen-Dazs by somebody that saw it and could verify that you earned your Haagen-Dazs. And it's the most dangerous wave in the world. One person statistically used to die there every year. But and we said the equivalent of agency life is 3 months. 3 months with us is your 6-foot barrel. But it also ties into entrepreneurship, and I understand that people have that love. They love those stories, like it's jumping off the cliff and building the plane on the way down. But you have to do that. You got to risk it to get the biscuit. Like it's all that stuff.
Risk it to get a biscuit. That's funny. The whole South African vibe, the whole boermaker plan. That is like people. It's so funny. You just make it up as you go along, and it's a very. I always love that ethos. You just make a plan. When you're out there in the water and you're heating, you're being smacked, and you've got like a minute left, and you find the way. Or you broke your board and you have to use an old board, and you make it happen. You make it work, and it's a good ethos. Like every South African has that ethos. We just make a plan.
And then I love this because I'm a student of innovation and disruption, but this tied into innovation so much for me was the Riptide. Never fight a Riptide.
I lecture every few months at this famous university in Chicago. It's called Kellogg Northwestern. It's a graduate school. Northwestern is one of the most famous universities. Kellogg Northwestern. It's a very famous school, and they have a school of innovation there. And they have this series every few months, and they bring in all these different execs from different corporations, executive education, about creativity and innovation. And the lead lecturer there has this wonderful organization he started. It's called the the Chicago Innovation Conference, and he has a big conference every year. And anyway, so I speak to them about innovation in the context of surface code, and they all write their code, and I tell people that, its first step is introspection, just sit and think, and then it's visualization, just visualize it, and then it's commitment, simple. It's kind of a simple structure. But that statement from Surface Code, I'll never fight a riptide, it comes from a moment of innovation that I saw. It's like when I saw, all of us have that memory. You saw Google for the first time, or you saw, like November or 3 years ago, I saw ChatGPT. I was in El Salvador for the first time. I saw it. I went, wow, man, that's going to change things. I don't want to miss that wave, you know what I mean? And then during my surfing career, when I just won the world title, and we were riding a certain type of board, everyone, we all rode the same thing. It's called the single fin, board with one fin. And this Australian guy walked down the beach with a board with two fins at the spot that I dominated, where I created a whole new way of riding inside the tube, and walks down with two fins. And I go, whoa, what's this guy got? He paddles out and does the first turn, and I'd never seen anyone move as fast before, and then smashes off the top, and I'd never seen that type of speed and radical carving before, and I could see it right there. I've seen the future, and that's the age of acceleration. But then I went out, and this guy Mark Richards and myself, who went on to actually become a 4-time world champion, we had like a duel in the water, and I got the better of him on that particular day. We rode inside the tube together, and I think I'd seen the future, but through hubris and arrogance, I went, nah, I'm going to stay on my own path. And he kicked my ass for a year while I stayed on my single fins, and it wasn't until I finally realized that I can't fight the riptide, and I've seen the riptide, but I can't fight the riptide. And I got on a twin fin, and I finally managed to become competitive today. But it's a great lesson for all of us. These are inexorable trends and riptides that flow through society. And when you see them, and you get that instinctive feeling like this is what's going to be happening, this is the future, and you go, nah, I'm not going to get involved with AI, it's shit, it's not human, I'm going to stick with what I'm doing. You better. You want to, if you want to, maintain a level of success, you better jump on it. You better have the humility and the curiosity to learn and to stay abreast of what's happening. And I'm curious, I'm humble. I know I'm trying to learn every single day. I mean, yesterday I got an email from Harvard about a new AI program they're doing. It's like a month intensive, and I'm going, hey man, Carla, I think I'm gonna be jumping on that. You've got to. It's exciting too. It's exciting when you see the riptide.
Yeah.
You go, wow, is it going to sweep me away, or am I going to be a part of it? You know what I mean? It's for me. I love surfing teaches you humility. It's like, no matter how you paddle out there, you're the number one guy in the world, and you're going to get your ass smacked. You're going to go over the falls, you're going to get dragged across that reef, you're going to break your board. So I think ingrained in most surfers is humility. It's like you're sitting there waiting for the wave. You can't go like, okay, that wave's coming for me, I'm going to get that wave at 3:25 p.m. because I got an appointment at 5, that wave's coming. It's like, you're out there and you're just bobbing around, and you have that, I think, that inherent, intrinsic humility.
Well, yeah, if you don't, it teaches you a lesson always, and it's such as life. But before we get into the such as life, the next one is I'll paddle back out. So the next code.
I will always paddle back out. I will
always paddle back out. And that was the story you tell there is of Waimea. and on somebody else's board, I think it was, and how you got how you got taught the line there. Is that there we go. They're very cool.
I will always pedal back. Yeah. That is I think that's a simple metaphor, and like I carry a stack of these cards with me at all times. And I mean, the kid will come up to me and I'll be having dinner, and you serve her like an 18-year-old kid. Hey, what you do now? First year university. Okay. I'm going to give you something. And I give him the card, and I go, okay, I wrote this 20 years ago. And I go, what is I'll always pedal back out mean? And they always say, I'll never give up. Even though they're not surfers. People get that metaphor. And if someone asks me what's out of all your lines that you've ever written in Surface Code, what's the one line? What's the one code that's the most important? And that's the one. I will always pedal back out. So I'll always pedal back out. Yeah, it was a simple story about getting smacked at Waimea Bay and having to make the decision as a young guy, as a 19-year-old in Hawaii, what you're going to do. You're going to paddle in, or you're going to paddle back out. But on the surface, people think of that as being like resilience and perseverance. You get smacked, paddle back out. When I was in South Africa a few years ago, I did the school tour. I spoke at all the swanky schools, Hilton, Michael House, those sorts of schools. And I spoke at very poor schools. And I spoke at this one school near Durban. It's called Ohlanga. Ohlanga means reed. Now, this was the first school started by a black man in South Africa. This is where Nelson Mandela voted for democracy in 1994 at Ohlanga. And the principal, Justice Mshali, is a great guy. He said, "Oh, Shaun, I'd love you to come to my school every couple of months." So I said, "No, I live in the United States." And he was just a great guy. There are, talk about leadership. The greatest leaders I found, where they were? They were working in schools in South Africa as principals. The greatest leaders. I'm talking about, I've met leaders from the biggest, best corporations in the world. South African principals. They should move these guys directly from where they're teaching into the role of government. Mind-blowing teachers. I cannot, you can't believe how good they are. Incredible. Like I walk into this one, sorry, I'm getting a bit off track. I walk into this one school in Amanzimtoti, in the cane fields, poor. And the headmaster, he's a bit suspicious of me, like, what's this white dude coming here? He said, "I run a mathematics school here." That's what he says to me. Poor neighbor. I run a mathematics school here. Everyone does mathematics here. At the beginning of the year, every student signs a contract with me. And if they don't perform, they're out. He says at the beginning of the year, every teacher signs a contract with me. If they don't perform, they're out. That's what he says to me. I said, but what do the parents think? He says every year, at the end of the year, I have to put up a huge tent. Thousands of people come. Everyone wants to come to my school. He says, have a look. He takes me into the hall. He's got these pictures, front page pictures of his students. 9 distinctions. But I said, but we only study 6 subjects, not my students. He takes me around to these poor, broken down classrooms. I remember studying calculus at Natal University. The kids are doing calculus. High school kids. You got a group of 5 kids. And they're doing calculus. I'm going, 9 distinctions. Now this one's studying nuclear medicine. This one's going, it's like He's got the pictures up on the front page of the page, like poor school. It's just amazing. I just saw so, and I just haven't thought of it now. When you talk to people, sometimes you put the puzzle together. These principles were just fantastic. I went to this other school in Durban, in KwaMashu, Kwilika High School, 1,600 students. The headmaster I met when he was 10 years old. Okay? I helped pay his way through school, helped pay his way through university. And when I got back to do this tour, he phoned me up. He said, "Hey, Shaun, it's Ernest Bongani and Corsi here. Do you remember me?" I said, "Of course I remember you." He said, "I want to tell you about my life. I have 2 university degrees. I have 2 teaching credentials. I'm a principal with 1,600 students. I want you to come and speak at my school." Not I want you to come. You are going to speak at my school. And I go along, speak at the school. Okay. So Ernest stands up and introduces me. I've spoken with the finest speakers in the world, Richard Branson, Malcolm Gladwell, huge speakers. When Ernest stood up, it was like hearing like a young Winston Churchill, or a young Martin Luther King, or a young Nelson Mandela, just articulate, inspiring, and all the students, super poor school. All the students are sitting there attentive, listening, no bullshit, no like talking. And then I spoke to the students, and then after I spoke, a young boy stood up and thanked me, and a young girl stood up and thanked me. Let me tell you, these young people, they should have been going to MIT, Stanford, Harvard. Yeah, I couldn't believe the quality, the eloquence, how articulate they were. And I'm thinking, wow, man, I gave Ernest something so tiny, just a little bit of some financial help, and he turned it into this incredible bounty. And that's where the leaders are. That I'm sure there's a tremendous amount of leaders in South Africa, but I saw it. I saw the leadership in these schools, which was absolutely breathtaking.
Yeah, I think it sounds like you. I'm getting a sense of pay it forward is happening there, because it's not the only thing. I mean, you're involved in a bunch of things, and I think it's like you mentioned the thing twice. That's a foundation. I understand.
Absolutely, it's our mission. Like I have this program. It's called Double Shaka. So Shaka,
Yes.
from you being in Hawaii, Hawaiian greeting. So Double Shaka. So every time I do a paid event for a corporation, I do a free one for school or university or rehab clinic or whatever, SEAL team, PTSD, so whatever. It's like, and it's so satisfying, and it's so good for the soul to just go out there and go, okay, I'm just sharing my message, I'm sharing my perspective, I'm sharing my method, just because I think it's going to help you. I have no agenda. I'm not trying to sell stuff or promote myself. I'm just doing it because I think my message is important.
And I think I heard you say it now, and I just want to go back to that and ask why. The question is why is I will always paddle back out. Why is that the most important? Why?
Okay, so you have perseverance and resilience. So Ochlanga is a reed. And when I think of Mandela, when I think of South Africa, when I think of the country was like, you can imagine a big storm, and the reed blows over, but then it bends and it bounces back. So Ochlanga was a wonderful name for the school, I thought, and it's a wonderful metaphor, I think, for South Africa. But from a personal perspective, that perseverance, man, you get whacked, South African style, you paddle back out. From a resilience perspective, you bounce back. But what does paddling back out represent? What fires you to paddle back out? It's hope. Hope is the fire that gives you the commitment to paddle back out in extreme circumstances. So hope underlies it all, because only by paddling back out can you get the next wave. So paddling back out is just part of the journey, but the hope gives you this sort of unconquerable fire, and this always burning fire to move forward. And light for me, light is this great symbol in my life. When I lost my beautiful son, my wife and I lost our beautiful son at 15 and a half, he wrote this amazing essay that he read to me over the phone like 2 hours before he passed away. And in it, he wrote about tube riding, which was my thing in surfing. And in it, he had these words: the light shines ahead. The light shines ahead. And when you're inside the tube and it sort of gets dark, and then you've got this light that shines ahead that you're sort of aiming for. It's a wonderful metaphor, but this metaphor of light is hope. In every single Jewish synagogue in the world, there's a light that is there, and it's right above the ark that contains the Torah, the 5 books, and it symbolizes hope, and it symbolizes sort of everlasting light and hope. So light is a great metaphor, and it's sort of a profound metaphor for me. And light is hope, and hope is the fire.
Yeah, and just to before we move on from that, because I want to get to Sunrise is the surf spot that picked you up from there. I love Sunrise, by the way. It was one of my favorite places on the North Coast. But just to go back to I will always paddle light is easy to say that, Shaun, but like what you described there is like, I wish that on nobody, no one. How do you do that? Like, how do you paddle? Did you have that already formulated that you have to, or is it you have to paddle out to continue the story? Or because 9 times out of 10 the story, yeah.
I had already written I will always paddle back out. So I will always paddle back out was a fundamental component of my ethos, my character. That no matter what, you're going to paddle back out again. But when you lose a child, then you're truly tested. And everyone will experience grief. Not everyone's going to lose a child, but everyone will experience grief at that time in your life. And everyone's path through that, along that rocky road of despair is different. And for me, I knew that I had to paddle back out. I had to. I had my wife, and I had to do it. And you make your path. I came to realize that you have to accept. You have to accept. Acceptance is very hard. To accept the finality of that decision. You've got to accept acceptance. You've got to forgive unconditionally. There can be no would have, should have, could have. Forgive self, forgive others. It's like a blanket forgiveness. It's super important. You've got to connect with nature. You've got to connect with your faith. I mean, there's a number of different things that people can do, and what I did, and you kind of just work, you sort of work it out for yourself. But I'll tell you one of the things that helped me, and it's so classic that we're talking about it, because the guy that made this happen actually just WhatsApped me last night and said, "Hey, Shaun, we've got to connect again." And I haven't spoken to him for over a year. So, what happened when I was in this dark, despairing state? The fire of every surfer is the stoke. That's the fire inside us. And you stand up on that wave for the first time, man, stoked. You get the tube for the first time, stoked. It's sort of that fire that forces us to get up at 5 a.m. and hit the beach and you don't really know you're going to get it, but you're there anyway because you're stoked. But my stoke had gone out. You know, when you think of fire, when you think of stoke, you think of fire, and my fire had gone out. I had no desire to go surfing. So my mate that I sat next to at Carmel College, we were at university together, in the army together, not in the same place in the army, but in the army at the same time, was like, hey, Shaun, you got to come surfing. Shaun, you got to come surfing. Shaun, you got to come surfing. And no, I kept saying no. And then eventually I relented. I went, okay. He said, I'm going to take you to a break you've never surfed before. So we cruised up the coast, past Belito, by Belito there. And then we come to this break and we walk down these steps to this perfect wave. It's like 3 to 4 foot, and just my mate and myself. And as we walk down, you know, that sun, that African sun, is just rising up, boiling up through that Indian Ocean. It's just like amazing moment. And, you know, dive in with my board. And I start crying as I'm paddling out. And then the first wave bashes over me and it just washes my tears away. It was an amazing sensation because I'd never cried in the water before. And then I paddle out and another wave smashes me and just washes the tears away. And I get out there to the back line and I'm sitting waiting for a wave and I can just feel my son's with me, man. I can just feel that. You know, I think what happens when you lose someone, their spirit is very, very strong, and it's right, stays there with you. And then caught a wave, like Matthew right there with me. And I kicked out, I paddled back out, caught another wave, and I just started to feel a bit better. It was still very hard, but I definitely started to feel a bit better. And it's like, you know, you come to this realization that it's okay to smile again. It's okay to be happy again. It's okay to enjoy again. It's not like, well, does that mean you're not treasuring the memory or observing the memory of your son? No, you can be happy again. And that's when I paddled up to my mate, Graham Taylor. And I said, hey, gee, what's the name of this wave? And he said, sunrise. So how about that? Sunrise, new beginning, light, you know, sort of the pieces in the puzzle started coming together, and it was a way, I suppose, to have a new start for me in my life and go down a different path and be on a different mission and take a different journey.
Thank you for sharing that, Shaun. Yeah. Yeah, so, and it again, transitions, the order of these things are just so beautiful. But I'll watch out for other surfers. Like, so that's the new journey, I guess, and that's the journey you're still on, and it's part of your purpose, it sounds like. It's and it's definitely something I've experienced in Hawaii, because you've got to watch each other's backs. I've been.
Yeah, it originally said, you know, because I think, you know, we couldn't put the whole thing in there, but it was, I'll watch out for other surfers after a big set, you know, on the original code card, because, you know, I'd seen it in Hawaii and I'd experienced it in Hawaii. I mean, luckily I never had to be rescued or pulled in, but certainly when a massive set comes through and guys get smashed or guys take a big wipe out, you know, there's this security I think that people have to know they're going to be rescued. And today, certainly, you know, big wave surfing, they've got the jet skis. So there's a lot more security and a lot more layers of protection than we had. You know, I mean, early days riding at Sunset Waimea, we had no leashes. So if you got taken out, you were really on your own. So certainly that adds to a high level of anxiety and fear. I mean, not to take anything away from the mega huge waves that guys are riding, but certainly there's a lot more security and there's a lot more safety issues. A lot more guys were dying back in my day than today. You know, years go by without people drowning. Yes, there've been some close calls, but the guys in the jet skis and everyone now knows CPR, and there's all sorts of different rescue systems and rescue layers. But look, I saw Mark Fu, an old friend of mine, was killed at Mavericks, and people just weren't watching out for other surfers after a big set. I mean, not to point a finger at anyone, but I think people are a lot more careful today.
Yeah. And it sounds like G was looking after you there. The next one is this is again for the younger generation need to learn this. I said to my wife, building up to this podcast with you, is like, I need to take the kids surfing more. I need to get fishing. I spearfish as well, but it's patience. They need patience. They've got this instant gratification and this stuff that happens on their tablet immediately, and it was like if you don't get something immediately, there's a problem. But I absolutely loved this. It was there will always be another wave. Like
yeah. It's very much about. I just wrote a post on LinkedIn about winning without desperation, winning with desperation. The notion that you can have another chance. It's not only one chance. You don't only get the one chance, and it doesn't mean that you don't go for it flat out hardcore. But you have to have that sort of mentality that there's going to be another one. Like there's that great Buddhist or Zen quote, abandon all hope of fruition. So it's like you're not really like it's not everything. You've got you can have another go, and also it's hope. There'll be another wave, so you can even if like maybe you get wiped out, you fail today, there's going to be another chance. It's not about finality, it's about opportunity, that there's going to be another chance.
I saw this recently that you might really like. It was as people say, like, you only live once, and it was like, no, that's not true. You only die once.
No, you don't.
You live every day.
Exactly. You die once. Yeah. Exactly. I think that life is multidimensional, multi-paths. I mean, I've lived a number of different lives. I've ridden a number of major waves in my life and my career.
Yeah, and then just quickly to the next point, which was I love the finishing aspect of it, like coming back from being a world title, the world title and a successful career, and then coming back and having back to some discipline and some other things that you've got instilled in you from the upbringing, and I think also just the way you've wired yourself. And interesting, just to tangent quickly, is we discussed it with my lead developer this morning. I think it's called the .md file in these AI agents right now. They have their own file and it's their code. So you tell the agent it is a designer and it must use this, and you give it the .md file. It's like, again, your code. You write your own code, and you're getting people to write their own codes. Yeah, but then to come back to it, I will always write. It's about to me, this was finishing. So coming back and finishing your first degree, and being sort of oldest in class, and that, and riding the wave.
Yeah, that was it. I will ride, not paddle into shore. I would say that out of all the things that I've written, that one gets the most reaction from surfers. They come up to me, "Hey, Shaun, man, why'd you write that?" I was late for my wife, or I was late for the business meeting. I was sitting there and thinking that, "Hey, Shaun's written, I'll ride, not paddle into shore. I've got to get a wave, and I can't just paddle in with my head between my legs." it's so funny. So that one is kind of the funniest, but also it's definitely about completion. It's about honor. It's about integrity. It's about self-esteem. It's about respect. Like you start something, man, finish it. I keep telling my son, hey, Luke, there are no shortcuts in life. You know what I mean? Which is also kind of related to, paddling around the impact zone in a way. But for me, like every surf, sit there and I wait for my wave, and a lot of the time, as you know, the last wave is the hardest wave to get. You end up waiting longer for your last wave than your than your first few waves. It's like you get that, you get an amazing ride, and you kick out, and you go, well, should I go in now? I want to get another one, and you paddle out, and you end up waiting half an hour for the wave instead of just like going in on that last one. So, yeah, that's a funny one. It's a funny one, but also it's about honor and self-esteem, self-respect.
Yeah, and then this ties in with the shakas. I think it does, but and like the quote comes up to me every now and again. I'm very much a quote guy, Shaun. If I haven't mentioned it or you haven't seen that yet, but only a surfer knows the feeling. Quote comes is I will pass on my stoke.
Yeah, I think every surfer has that responsibility. I mean, surfing's given us so much. That first time you stand up on a board and you get that stoke feeling, and all the great experiences that surfing has had. It's really about mentoring, volunteering, uplifting, inspiring others. The core of leadership, and like what Shaun Tomson talking about leadership. I work with thousands of leaders. I went and did the hard yards for 2 years, oldest student at Northeastern University, a famous university here in the United States, and I did a Master of Science in Leadership. I know about leadership. Influence and inspiration, that's it. That's what leaders do. They influence and they inspire. Yeah, they do other things too, but essentially, the leader's got to influence and inspire. And as a surfer, you can influence and inspire others too through stoke, man. You just pass on that stoke, that incredible, exuberant feeling, teach someone how to surf. And it doesn't have to be a surf lesson. It can be something else. It's really the core tenet of leadership, passing on that stoke, passing on that enthusiasm, passing on that knowledge.
Yeah, it reminded me, and again, they tie very much into each other. This code, and remind me of the winning. So winning not being the most important thing, just that remind me of this. I don't know if you've ever seen that illustration of it's a podium, and there's a girl on the at first place, and she's like quite happy with the certificate or whatever, and then there's second place, and she's like hands up, like claiming it, like double shaka, like, and it's like she's the winner, she's the actual one that's winning.
I mean, my first event ever that I competed in, and I like to think I was an instant success. I got third. There was only 3 of us that I got my third. So it's that perspective. How you look at it. Is are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic? It's a simple choice. That fundamental choice in life: optimism, pessimism, kind, unkind. Those are 4 big words there. Optimism, pessimism, kind, unkind. They're very powerful, and I can see that you're into words and quotes. But I'll tell you what I have I've discovered. I have discovered that the words of great leaders, Obama, Mandela, Kennedy, Churchill, Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, those are words of inspiration. Certainly, those words of great leaders inspire us. But the words that transform us are our own words. I've seen it. The words of transformation are our own words. That's why I encourage people. You want to go through some transformation, write your code, 12 lines. Not my words. No one's words but your own. And you put our will in front of those words. It gives the words incredible power. So the words of great leaders, inspirational. Your own words are the words of transformation.
And that's passing on the stoke there. Just on that, there's a Ricky Gervais series that I love. I've only watched the first season, but Afterlife. Are you familiar with Afterlife?
No, I'm not.
Ricky Gervais. And there's a line. I felt like this part of that section was. I felt like it was written for me at one stage, but there was this line I think you might enjoy. It's happiness is amazing. It doesn't even matter if it's yours or not. Like that.
Yeah,
Like that's the thing.
one.
It's like you see those videos of people laughing on the train or the bus or whatever, and people just start laughing because someone else is laughing.
Well, it's contagious. You see,
Yeah, and you've got that study on
it's called
contagion.
emotional contagion. So when I went back to university, like I say, I was the oldest dude there. And fundamental to what I do is emotional contagion. So it's a scientific phenomenon, and that emotions are contagious. And it used to be thought of that emotions were only contagious in a physical environment. It's like a subset of group dynamics. You're in an audience, and you have an inspirational speaker, and you can uplift people, or you're in a conference room and you have someone who's very uplifting, but it can go the other way too. You have someone that's downcast, pessimistic, and can bring emotions down, and ultimately those emotions can have a big impact on behavior. So through emotional contagion you can ultimately impact behavior, but only a physical environment. So about 10 years ago there was a big study here, one of the biggest social studies in the history of the world, of 689,000 people. That was the sample size, with Facebook and the National Academy of Sciences. Okay, they wanted to see if emotional contagion and behavioral change that can result can be transmitted virally over the web, over the internet. So they did this big study, 689,000 people, serious study, and they found experimental evidence of massive scale emotional contagion through social networks. Okay, it was really, really simple study about people got more positive words in their feeds, resulted in them posting more positive feeds, more positive posts, and the inverse on negative. So all of us got great power through the medium of social platforms. All of us, every single, and when I do my presentation, I tell people you've got a great responsibility here. You've got the power, for good or for evil, optimism, pessimism, kindness, unkindness. You've got the power there. What you're going to do, it's your choice. You want to create a positive wave, you want to create a negative wave. The science is behind it. So every time you make a post, you're impacting the world. Because like when I make a post, okay, maybe it's going out through 50, 100, 200, sometimes you make a post, it goes out to hundreds of thousands of people, you're making a big impact, negative or positive. So every single one of my posts are positive. That's the way I roll. Because it's part of my mission to create a positive wave of hope and purpose around the world based on the values of Surface Code. So all of us got the responsibility. Where are you going to be? You're going to be part of the tribe, you're going to be part of the positive wave warrior, you're going to be part of the negativity.
Yeah.
We all got power, right?
Yeah, and I guess it's also an entrepreneur in you, because the glass is always half full. It's always half full. If I go to the next, because we're almost there on the code, but I will catch a wave every day. Again, it ties into a bit of discipline. It's just about doing it again and over again and keep doing the thing.
Well, I hadn't thought of it that way, but that's pretty good. That you see, like I say, the code's like an onion. People interpret it in their own way. It was actually written as a source of well-being and a source of relaxation and a source of vicarious experience. So okay, maybe I can't go surfing today. Hey, but I'm just going to chill and think about that wave I had at J-Bay. And even that escape from being in front of the Excel worksheet or in front of a bloody AI trying to find a prompt to create something like whatever, it just kind of takes you away from that day to day and takes you into that special place. And whatever that means, for me it's obviously, for you it's surfing, but it might be walking through a forest or walking along a beach or skiing down a mountain, whatever. But I will stay connected to what I love. even in my mind.
And the visualization, I think you talk of there, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I love it, absolutely. Love it. All surfers are joined by one ocean.
You know, that camaraderie, that aspect of us all being part of a small little cog in the machine of humanity. You know, that realization that, you know, we're part of a tribe. And you know, we connected through similar values. And, you know, while you might have you know, just from a surfing perspective, you know, you got the Aussie guy, you got the Brazilian guy, you got the Peruvian guy, but we all have this common value structure, this common source of inspiration, love, excitement, exhilaration. Yeah, so I like that one, you know. And you know, when I went back to university and did those studies and found this data about how all of us can impact the world through our social platforms, that the world is smaller now and we all can have an impact on it. It's really incredible.
I will honor the sport of kings.
Yeah, so when I think of that one, I think of Juku Hanamoku, who was an Olympian, multi-Olympian gold medal winner in swimming, but also he was a sort of iconic surfer. And he was very regal, and you know, Hawaiians developed the sport of surfing, and it was part of the culture. And the kings rode these long boards, and the commoners rode these short little boards. So, you know, it was called the sport of kings, and I thought it was about honor. It was about integrity. You know, in my day when I grew up, you know, surfing was maligned. It didn't have a good reputation. Our surfers are drug addicts, they're dopers, they're dropouts, they're not going anywhere. So, you know, us crew, you know, we really changed that perception of that surfers were, yes, you didn't have to be a competitor, but you were still had to be accorded respect, just like a golfer's accorded respect or a tennis player's accorded respect. Even though surfing is so different to those sports in terms of lifestyle and rules and regulations and sportiness. So that was written as the last line, but you know, people got to respect and honor what they do. And I suppose in some ways it's about honor, it's about integrity, about self-esteem, respect. Yeah, I like that line. I just think of this Duke Hanamoku. And I never got to meet him. He passed away like 1968, and my first trip to Hawaii was 69. But my dad met the whole family, and you know, my dad was influenced by them. Duke Hanamoku was his hero, swimming hero.
Okay.
And yeah, it's a nice ending, I thought. And you know, I've got to say that I wrote this so many years ago. I wrote it in 20 minutes, okay? 15, 20 minutes. And these 12 lines have become for me like a North Star. And I encourage people to, you know, just write their own code, because, you know, people say like, what's purpose? You know, it's such an ethereal concept, but it's simple. Purpose is a committed intention to realize meaningful aims to yourself and the broader world. Committed intention. That's what this is. It's a committed intention. 12 lines, every line beginning with, oh, well, this is purpose. This is your purpose. Just divided into 12 different segments. So I encourage people, 15 minutes. And you pick up a pen and do it. There's no AI bullshit involved here. It's just you pick up a pen, write your code, photograph it. You can go to my website, ShaunTomson.com. You can download a worksheet, free worksheet, and then write your code.
We'll have all the links.
Yeah, no, so it's a super cool thing to do. So, why did I do this? Why did I write 12 lines? So many years ago, a guy phoned me up and said, hey, you know, I want you to be, we're starting up Surfrider Foundation, want you to be a first member. He said, we need a poster. We need some words on the post. I found a picture of me doing a big bottom turn of pipeline, and I wrote 5 words. Do a good turn today. Simple, do a good. And today, Surfride is the biggest surfing environmental group in the world. We have a $20 million budget, and I've been on the board numerous times. But just do a good turn today. You know, those words were like powerful, like a North Star for me. And then, I don't know, 15, 20 years later, he phones me up and goes, hey, Shaun, Rincon, your adopted surfing home break, is facing an environmental challenge. I need some help here. He said it's a big problem. It's an $8 million problem. He said, I'm going to give you a $100 budget to help solve it. I went, are you crazy? He said, no, I'm going to bring a group of students down the beach, give them something, inspire them. And I'm going to bring the government down and the city officials and the water board. It was like a pollution problem. Mm. So I went, well, how can I inspire them? Words, man, words have got great power. I wrote this 15 minutes. And I went and made 100 cards. And I even made some misspellings. I misspelled commitment. I misspelled every. Every came out as very. And last weekend, Glenn Henning, the guy, said, hey, Shaun, check this out. And he pulls out one of the original cards. It's all broken and battered. And check it out, Shaun. He's still got it in his wallet. And words have got great power. Yeah. And for anyone in the audience that's hung in there while I've been speaking, your words got the greatest power of all.
Thank you so much, Shaun. Just before there's a few things left just to wrap up if you've got
Sure.
the time. I mentioned we have our previous guests, Oscar, Chalupsky, Pepper Marie, and that sort of stuff but we had that questions from Dale Tomlinson, and then Jeff Hubbard from Hawaii. But like
I'm sure Dale has like thrown me like a tough question. He's a good boy, and I'm sure he's. Let's see if I can even answer.
No, he's also reminded me. He's got such a good sense of humor, so I imagine you'd get along with him. Yeah, just like I can imagine you guys laughing and that.
Yeah, he's got a great sense of humor.
So he said, Shaun, when you brought back instinct back, you were you reclaiming a brand or reclaiming a part of yourself? How much of it is about building a business, or how much about nostalgia and possibly how you want to be remembered?
Yeah, no, I think it's all of those. You know, in 1978, my cousin Michael, we were very close, we were like brothers. Michael would spend every weekend with us. My dad would pick me up at the Carmel and my brother, and then he'd pick up Michael at DHS and take us surfing. We surfed in all the competitions together. We went to Hawaii together. He started Gotcha in 1978. And Mike and I, even though we were close, we were super competitive. And I went, what? Michael started Gotcha? I'm going to start a brand as well. So I had this beautiful logo that my dad had a friend design. It was my first picture ever in the Daily News, a picture of me surfing at Dairy Beach, and my dad got a friend of his to create this beautiful logo. And he said, son, this is going on all your boards. I went, nah, Daddy, it's too big. He said, I buy the boards, the logos on the boards. My dad was quite a marketing guy. You know, I told you, he started the first Gunston in South Africa. So I started to do well, and this logo became famous. It was on the covers of all the surfing magazines around the world, and I thought, wow, no, okay, I've got a logo now, but what brand am I going to use? You know, what label? So for any entrepreneur out there that's thinking of creating a brand, you can do 2 ways. You can just, put a collection of letters together, and it's going to take you years to create something out of that grouping of letters. But if you can find a word or a grouping of words that can really reflect the essence of your passion. And for me, it was tube riding, and I was recognized as, creating different lines in the tube. And I went like, what's the best moment when you're tube riding? When you're operating on instinct? I went, that's it, instinct. So the word and the logo have special meaning for me, special meaning. And when I retired from the tour, I had a dispute with my partners in 1990. I said, you're going to last 1 year without me. And they did. Lasted maybe 2 years without me. And eventually I reacquired the IP. My wife and I reacquired the IP. And then we did a little small business in South Africa with a licensee. You know, we just started sort of ticking over in South Africa. Did a little bit of business in Australia, and then I went full on here in the United States. Still small. We want to create a sustainable business, and every piece of every sale here is going to go towards creating a positive wave of hope and purpose around the world. So yes, it's part nostalgia. Yes, it's part the past, but it's about the future too, about how can I impact youth with a cool brand. And it would be great to be able to build it up to what it was. I mean, it was the #1 youth brand in South Africa. You know, like 1 and 2, we were always fighting it out with Gotcha. We sold in 13 countries. I sponsored numerous surfers to become world champions. Tom Carroll won the world title twice when I sponsored him. Barton Lynch won it once. You know, I loved mentoring these guys. And I loved sponsoring guys. I loved it. So I want to, tie all that into this and have this be the world's first purpose-driven surfwear brand.
We'll use that to transition to the ad that you picked, because it is an instinct ad. And it's just there's a little bit of a story on that, and we'll have the link in the show notes, guys. But I'm looking at a lineup, a bunch of surfers sitting out in the water, some of them lying down, paddling out, and there's a beautiful quote above it: "Waiting for waves is okay. Most people spend their lives waiting for nothing."
So
why did you pick that? Yeah,
I always loved that ad. It was done by the guy at the time. It was the hottest small agency in LA, the Rod Dyer Group. And it just tells a story of surfing, of how you just sit and you wait. And some people think it's such a waste of bloody time. You just sit there and wait, and you wait so long. You wait half an hour for a wave, a great ride. But then you get that great ride, wow! And it's like the time you waited is meaningless. And also, just that time you wait too. You're sitting there in the ebb and the flow of the ocean, sitting atop the sea, under the beautiful blue dome of the horizon. It's just even the waiting can be so special, because you just sort of connected but disconnected, and you have that hope of that next wave. So you're waiting for something special, and a lot of people wait for nothing. So that's why I always love that ad. It has a beautiful story. It can be read into it in many ways. And I go into surf shops now because we're selling to surf shops only. We're selling to, we've got about 120 shops we're selling to in the United States at the moment. And some stores have got that ad up that's been up there for 30 or 40 years. 30 years, that ad is still up there. So that ad really struck a responsive chord with a lot of the surfing community. And when I do posts I'm very active on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook. A lot of people go, "Wow, Shaun," and they quote that back to me, or they send me a picture that they've still got it up in their bedroom. So it's wonderful to know that what you did resonated, what you did made an impact, and if it was just up there to sell clothes, that thing would have been down in one day. You made a difference, you made an impact. And that's what I'm after, maximum impact. And Instinct and my talks, my books, are all a way to create maximum impact on the community and build a positive wave of hope and purpose around the world.
It's such a good line, and again, just a incredible piece of work there. I did prompt you for this, but favorite quote and why?
It's like I said, that the most powerful words are our own words. Yes, the words of great leaders have inspired me, and certainly there's some amazing quotes out there. But for me, my favorite quote's my own quote. I will always pedal back out.
Well, thank you for it, Shaun. Is there anything I haven't asked you that I should have, Shaun, that we haven't touched on?
No, I think we've been through. I think we've been through this quite comprehensively. Just like to tell people that the book is being released in the United States and on the 28th of April, but there will be an audiobook, and be cool to cool if someone's interested. They can get the audiobook. But I would love people, yes, to write their code and share it. You do it with a business group. You might have a sports team. I've had great success with sportsmen. I've had great success with SEAL teams. I've had great success in organizations. So you can just download it from my website. But connect with me on my social platforms: LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. And interestingly enough, talking about the amazing talent in South Africa, I use a little ad agency in South Africa to do all my stuff. Great guy. His name's Shaun Tomson. Awesome dude. And then I have a great group in Cape Town that help me with my LinkedIn and my outreach on socials. So I'm very connected still to the talent, creativity, and innovation in the homeland.
Well, amazing. I watched Gary Vaynerchuk recently say, or last year, end of the year, saying 2026, he was saying this to American listeners predominantly, but everywhere in the world listens to Gary V too, saying that you need to be working with Africa in some sort of way. You need to figure out how to work with Africa. So I'm glad you still are. Thank you so much for the time, energy, and attention. It's been incredible. So the incredible Shaun Tomson.